Hi there, this is Jillian On Love, and I am on a mission to teach people how to completely transform their romantic relationships by first transforming the relationship they have with themselves. So whether you're single, in a relationship, or heartbroken, I've got you covered. I'm Jillian Turecki, certified relationship coach, author, and teacher with over 20 years experience helping people transform their relationships through their bodies, their breaths, and minds. I have now taught and coached thousands of people to become better versions of themselves and show up better within their lives and inside of their relationships. Today's episode is called From Insecure to Self-Love: How to Conquer Your Anxiety in Relationships. And your first thought might be that this is just about attachment styles, but this actually transcends it. And yes, attachment styles, any sort of insecure attachment, like anxious attachment or avoidant attachment, is part of this story. It's part of the larger theme and tapestry. However, to have insecurity in relationships isn't just about your attachment style. This is really about learning how to overcome and transcend your ego, just like I have to do for myself. It's learning how to have more self-confidence, and it's learning how to raise your self-esteem so that you can ultimately love yourself more. I'm going to go through several bullet points, about 8 or 9, of what you can do very specifically to conquer any sort of insecurity at all. And I will use insecurity and anxiety almost interchangeably. So any kind of insecurity or anxiety when it comes to very specifically romantic relationships. So whether you are dating, whether you've been married for many years, or whether you're heartbroken and really reflecting on your past relationship, or you're healing a broken heart. So this is going to apply to everyone. And there will be times where I focus more on just early dating. But like I said, overall, this is something that you will be able to work with regardless of your attachment style and regardless of what your relationship status is. So the first point is learn to directly and honestly ask for what you need from someone. And you can apply this to any relationship. This can be a friendship. This can be a work relationship. As always, I will be focusing a little bit more specifically on romantic relationships. However, you really can apply this to anyone. Most people are quite insecure when it comes to asking what it is that they need from someone. Most of us feel there's a lack of confidence there. That's because many people are too busy trying to control how another person perceives them. And that's sort of like the root of insecurity and anxiety is, instead of actually being me, instead of being forward and forthright about what it is that I need, which means I would have to validate the fact that I have these needs, I'm going to unconsciously manipulate to control the narrative so that I can control how someone perceives me. And the way that that manifests itself is sometimes it manifests itself as playing it cool, right? I don't need any needs. I'm not needy, because there's a whole fear around appearing needy, which I will get to in a moment. Or sometimes it's, let me please you, so that it's never about my needs. It's only about your needs. And so what we do is that we will have all these tactics, like I said, that are more manipulative than they are direct and forward. So I'm using manipulative not in a really dark way today. I'm using manipulative as the antithesis of being direct and honest. We will unconsciously manipulate people to get our needs met, as opposed to being very direct and honest. And this is a really big problem. And the only way to actually conquer insecurity in relationships, how to become more secure, how to transmute and transform your attachment style, begins with how you ask people for your needs to be met. And like I said, it begins with having an understanding of what your needs are, and maybe even more than that, validating the fact that you have those needs and being okay with the fact that you are vulnerable, not invulnerable. Trying to appear invulnerable in dating, in relationships, does not help anyone. It is literally just a telltale sign of insecurity. So a large part of that is our conditioning, because we don't want to appear weak. We don't want to appear needy. We don't want to appear vulnerable. And being needy, paradoxically, is when we go into the mentality of pick me, choose me, love me. The mentality of pick me, choose me, love me is the mentality of insecurity. And it is the mentality of neediness. So it's when we actually unconsciously manipulate, or we try to control how another person perceives us, instead of actually being honest and direct and forward, that actually does the exact opposite of what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to appear like we're not needy, but that's what actually makes us needy. And there really is nothing more seductive and attractive in another human being, regardless of who you date, than someone's confidence in themselves. Now, that doesn't mean that you're never going to have insecurities. Part of being human is having insecurities. Confident people do not have a lack of insecurity. Confident people are aware of the ways in which they're insecure and do not let their insecurity to completely control how it is that they show up in a relationship. Vulnerability is the courage to express an insecurity. So you just don't want, the whole point about being direct and honest about what you need from someone is not allowing this story about, oh, I don't want to appear this way, or I really want them to pick me, choose me, and love me. So I'm not going to, be forthright and forward about what it is that I need, because guess what? When you're really honest and you're forward and direct with people about what it is that you need from them, there are going to be people who reject you because of that. They won't stay. That might be in a dating scenario. It might be in a relationship scenario, early relationship scenario. But it's the ones who matter who will stay. And so, tied into having to be direct and honest about what you need from someone is you have to be willing to let go of people who are not willing to stay because it's too much for them. Your honesty is too much for them. And you can't let that stop you. The more direct you are, and it's not about being antagonistic. And I think that this is where people really get confused. It's like, I'm going to be direct and honest, so I'm going to be, really intense. Sometimes we have to be a little intense, but I'm going to be antagonistic and slightly defensive. It's never about control or antagonism or defensiveness. It's literally, the way that I'm speaking to you right now is literally how you would speak to someone else. And maybe you would have to get a little intense. And maybe if it's a serious relationship and there's a lot on the line and this is a conversation that has been a long time coming, maybe you even cry. All of that is okay. You don't have to confuse direct and honest and forward with stoicism. But in early dating, for example, the more clear and forward you are, literally the more attractive you are going to be, because what that registers to someone's unconscious is, this person is safe because They know who they are. They are comfortable in their bodies. And then what you do is that you actually give another person permission to be forward with you too. And will there be people who won't be able to handle it? Like I said, absolutely. And you know what? Good riddance. Those are not the people who you want to stay. Neediness is relying on someone so much that you forfeit your autonomy to the point where you have no idea or very little idea how to meet your core needs, how to meet your needs for love, because we can't rely on a partner for our only source of love. We need to also get love from family, if possible, from friends, if possible, community, pets, children. So you never just want one person to be the only source of connection in your life, right? So that's when we get needy, when someone else, like our partner, is the only source of connection. We're needy when they are the only source of fulfillment. So we've got nothing going on in our life, nothing that lights us up, nothing that interests us, nothing that inspires us, nothing that actually preoccupies our time and our energy. And then all we do is completely focus on the other person and their life. That's neediness. But this idea that no one's supposed to meet your needs, you have to meet your own. We can't look at things in such a binary way. Relationships that thrive because people are meeting each other's needs. And they are also people who have a level of autonomy so they're able to meet their needs as well. Now, you're not going to get into a relationship and expect someone to meet all of your needs all of the time, because you're going to have to meet your needs a lot of the time when your partner is not able to. But this idea that we're not supposed to say, I need love from you a very specific way, I need connection with you a very specific way, I need you to communicate with me a certain way, I need you to, call me when you're away. These are things that are important. And when you can become an advocate for your needs, knowing full well that, you know how to fill yourself up, you're not just depending on this other person to do it all for you. When you can become an advocate for your needs inside of a relationship is when you completely change the game, not only for yourself, but you transform the relationship. And a very powerful reframe that I want to point out to you is this. You tell someone who you care about what it is that you need from them. And that is actually not just an act of self-love. It is an act of love for the other person. Because what you are actually saying to them is, I care about you and our relationship so much that I'm going to be very direct with you about what it is that I need, because I understand that the alternative means resentment. The alternative means me abandoning myself. The alternative means that our relationship is actually going to struggle. So I hope that serves as a really important reframe for you. You do it for the relationship as much as you do it for yourself. Number 2. So this applies much more to obviously early dating and early relationship. Stop asking for commitment from strangers. So when we are insecure and we have anxiety around dating and relationships, what that means is that we are very uncomfortable with the uncertainty that is built into the reality of the first few months of seeing someone. And a lot of people will rush into the exclusivity conversation or the commitment conversation, or a lot of people will even rush into I want to get married or I want to move in together and we've only been together 7 months. You don't want to rush that with someone because you are so uncomfortable with the uncertainty of it all. And I know that it's hard and it does require sitting with your discomfort and self-soothing and processing your insecurity and really getting curious about why it is that you're rushing it with this person. I say a stranger because I think there are obviously, well, maybe it's not so obvious, but I do think that there are degrees of knowing a person. And I would say for sure, like within the first month to 2 months of dating someone, they're pretty much a stranger. And I would say 6 months, they're not a stranger, but you don't know them fully. And, I think that we can't really put a time frame on it, but overall, we know a person's character by at least a year in. And then of course there's you never really fully know a person. And that's kind of exciting. That to me translates to I can spend the rest of my life with someone and know that there's always more for them to understand about me and vice versa. But people are rushing into commitment before they've actually discovered if the person who they're seeing is someone who has the building skills necessary to build a relationship. Sometimes you have to have the commitment to each other to explore. The commitment is sort of like a container, and that you need that container to explore whether or not you do have what it takes together to build a relationship. But too many people are rushing into this very, very early on because they're anxious and insecure without even knowing a person's character, without understanding or discovering if they're emotionally available to you, without knowing if they have the skills that is necessary to build. And some of those skills is what they value. Valuing connection, valuing relationship, valuing building with someone. There are a lot of people, you may have heard me say this before, there are a lot of people who are ready for a connection. They're ready for the good feelings that a connection comes with, but they're not actually, they don't know how to build a relationship. They're not capable of that, or they're not ready for that. And I've said before, you don't want to play house with a stranger. It's the same thing. You want that commitment because you like this person, because there's maybe some attachment wounding, maybe there's just some insecurity overall, and you're rushing. And I've seen, by the way, this might totally throw you for a loop, but there are people who are quote unquote avoidantly attached, and they're rushing commitment in the beginning too. A lot of times that avoidant attachment will come out later when there's conflict. Sometimes it's really early on. There's a huge spectrum. There's nuance, but regardless of attachment style, people will get where they have a lower self-confidence and a lower threshold for uncertainty. They will rush commitment, and they don't even know they don't even know this person's character and what they're actually capable and what their values are. So that's number 2. You have to resist that urge. You have to go slower. You can't decide that you want to commit to someone until you have some semblance of their relationship skills. So number 3 is something that I like to refer to as unconscious insecurity. Unconscious insecurity is expecting or wanting a unicorn partner, believing in the quote unquote the one, and this overwhelming desire and need to be chosen. I call it unconscious insecurity because when we fantasize about meeting this perfect person who does not exist, the person who's going to be totally secure, make you feel totally secure, be a great communicator, a great relationship builder, we want it to quell our relationship anxiety. And a lot of people with relationship insecurity and anxiety are looking for that perfect person because they don't want to have to face the discomfort of their own insecurity that they will inevitably face at various points in their relationship. Obviously, a healthy relationship, people feel secure, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to have to face your own internal demons when it comes to this. And there's no one who's coming into your life to save you and to rescue you from that. So we still are always going to have to look in the mirror. We're still going to be challenged. And in many ways, that right person is going to really challenge you lovingly in that way to kind of transcend some of the things that have sabotaged or held you back in past relationships. And so this fantasy of being chosen, of the unicorn, the one, is really a fantasy about certainty. It's really a fantasy about, well, now I never have to worry. And there's no person out there who's going to take all your worries away. For sure, there are people that you're going to be in a relationship with that will trigger every insecurity that you've ever had. And then there will be people, hopefully, who you're in a relationship with where you're not triggered that way. But even with the good ones, you're going to have to face this within yourself. So the obsession with being chosen, the pick me, the wanting that unicorn partner, that is all a manifestation of unconscious insecurity of wanting someone to kind of rescue us. And so you have to understand that part of being ready for a relationship is understanding that there is no perfect partner. And it's also understanding that there are going to be times in your relationship, and this is different for everyone because some people, and this is not an easy thing to say, but it's the truth. Some people are more complicated than others and have more things that they have to face within themselves, but it's all doable. Regardless of where you fall on that spectrum. And regardless of whether or not, let's say you're with absolutely the right match for you, there are going to be times in your relationship where you are going to see things in yourself that you don't like. You're going to see your insecurity. You're going to see the way that maybe you shut down. You're going to see your defensiveness. You're going to see elements of your codependency. You're going to see your resentment. The purpose of a relationship is to grow and to transcend that. I kind of laugh when people say, "Oh, I need to leave the relationship to find myself." And I think there's, maybe there is some validity to that, but a lot of people will walk away from a good relationship too soon because they don't like what they see in the mirror inside of the relationship. And so they think they have to leave and fix themselves to come back into the relationship when really that mirror is meant to be stared at and looked at and scrutinized and worked through inside of the relationship. Don't expect that the unicorn is coming, and do expect that even with the right person, you are going to have to be brave and confront things inside of yourself, insecurities and fears that you really wish you did not have. And the only way to do it so that you actually become more secure is to face it. Number 4, if you want to conquer your anxiety in relationships, if you want to move from insecure to self-love or from anxious to secure, you have to stop withdrawing and shutting down in your relationships. Now, people do this, and I will say there are people of all genders who do this. Men do it more because in general, men of certain generations are not raised with the same connection to their emotional selves as women are. And women just tend to be more in touch with themselves emotionally overall. And we are celebrated for that. we're expected to do that. It's different for men and it's different for boys. Now, there are plenty of women who shut down and withdraw in their relationships. It's not just a gender thing, but you could be in a relationship with someone who is so avoidantly attached that they're a nightmare to be in a relationship with. Just the same way as someone who's incredibly anxious and controlling is a nightmare to be in a relationship with. And they don't communicate and they stonewall and they shut down and you can't get close to them and they're always avoiding you, right? But then there are people who are loving and you feel great with them. But when there is some conflict, their go-to is to shut down. Or when they're feeling insecure, maybe they're feeling insecure about being loved by you. Maybe they're feeling insecure that they're not enough for you. Maybe they're feeling insecure that they can't solve a problem for you, that they don't know how to be the right partner for you. Their way of dealing with that insecurity, as opposed to getting needy, is to really grasp onto their autonomy and maybe withdraw from the relationship a little bit. And if this is you want to stop doing it. And I understand it's easier said than done, but what I don't agree with is pathologizing a person to the degree where you're saying, well, they just can't change. No, we all, if we have a certain level of mental acuity, we have self-control. And everyone has the capacity, most everyone has the capacity to expand their self-awareness and their mindfulness. And withdrawing and pulling away is a habit. And when it happens a lot, you're the one who has all the control in the relationship. Because then the people around you, when you're withdrawing and pulling back, are all trying to get closer to you. They're all trying to knock down your walls. And so you are unconsciously controlling the whole narrative of your relationships. And you are going to make anyone who loves you anxious. If you need time to process what it is that you're feeling, you need to communicate that. But first, you have to be able to locate in your body in real time where you're feeling the tension and start to notice, become mindful of the shutting down and the pulling away, and get curious and say, okay, I'm pulling away, I'm withdrawing. What is it that I'm feeling that is triggering me into this pattern? Okay, well, I feel not enough, or I feel rejected, or I feel overwhelmed, or I feel frustrated, right? So you start to name those feelings. Okay, what can I do differently? Well, I can take a deep breath. I can communicate. I can start to be more direct and honest about what it is that I need from my partner, what it is that I need from this person in order to help me not withdraw and go into the habit that hurts everyone, including myself. And this is not something that you're going to be able to do overnight. It's a practice, but it's absolutely important, because the shutting down and the withdrawing is just a sign of insecurity, or it's just a sign of anxiety. It's you not knowing what to do with your feelings and your overwhelm in that moment. So you go into a default pattern that definitely doesn't feel good for you either. And it's learned behavior, it's conditioned behavior, it's habitual behavior. And you want to break the pattern starting today if you want to move from anxious and insecurity into more self-love, self-worth. Number 5, this is for all of you who are healing a broken heart, whether you were like in a 1-month relationship, in a 2-week intense dating scenario, or you just broke up with your partner of several years. You need to unfollow them and block them on social media. I understand that this is more challenging when you have children. And I will be doing an episode soon on how to co-parent and navigate through very tricky divorces and breakups. But for now, if you have the privilege of going through a heartbreak with someone with whom you do not share children, you have got to stop the insanity and unfollow on social media. Don't feel guilty or bad about it. I mean, we live in a world right now where it's almost like impossible to not look. But you have to, because what happens is every time you watch a story of theirs on, let's say, Instagram, what your mind is doing is creating your own version of a story about their life that actually is not based in reality and only sabotages your healing process. Every time you look at a picture, your mind is then creating a whole story around it, a version of them through your perception. Because remember, most of us are trying to unconsciously control how people perceive us. And a lot of people use social media as that way. So when you're looking at it, you're buying into the perception, then you're creating your own bias and story around it. And it's not based in reality. Trust me, it is not. And your healing is being severely interfered with when you follow your ex on social media. And you just gotta block it. Block that person completely, because it is the only way that you will actually face your grief. And it's through the facing of your grief that you will process the pain. It's really important to go in these types of scenarios where you don't share children, to go for a period of time, no contact, because you need to be able to face the grief, the finality of it, and to eventually move on. And following them keeps you wrapped up and hooked in the story. And it is absolutely, honestly devastating for your nervous system. Number 6, I'm going to talk about sex. And I'm going to talk about waiting to sleep with someone who you started seeing. I want to preface this by saying this has nothing to do with morality. This is not about judging. All I am saying is, and this is certainly not about rules, because I don't really believe in any rules. I believe in being an advocate for yourself and protecting yourself and your emotions and your heart. If you are someone who attaches strongly to the person who you like once you sleep with them, if you are someone who has noticed that when you sleep with someone, then that's when you're starting to be rejected. Do I see this more, this sensitivity and this bonding that happens after sex more in women? Yes, because it's biological. It's because we produce a hormone we have estrogen, and then estrogen produces oxytocin. And men have estrogen too, but not nearly the same amount. And it's not to say that there aren't men who bond after sex. There are, but I do see this more in women. But regardless, the biggest mistake that I see people make is trying to deny that part of them. When I don't understand how, and I used to think this, that people think that there's something wrong with them because they get attached after they sleep with someone. What if, and again, I'm not judging, I'm just trying to play a little devil's advocate here. What if it's the not attaching after sex with someone that really is the problem and the bigger concern? There is absolutely nothing wrong with you for attaching to someone after you have sex with them. It is nature, it is biological, it is normal. But that means that if that is you, then you've definitely slept with people and gotten really anxious afterwards. And you've definitely slept with people too soon. And what I mean by too soon is before you knew that they were actually interested in you emotionally. And then what happens is you don't hear from them again, or you hear from them, but they don't really pursue you anymore. They don't pursue a relationship. Their feelings have changed. And then you're left feeling on the far end of the spectrum, devastated, on the low end of the spectrum, embarrassed and rejected and more insecure than you were to begin with. In order to go from insecure to secure, you have to understand where you fall on that spectrum when it comes to having sex with someone who you like and you're seeing. Everyone gives a different meaning to sex. To some people, it means there's an emotional connection. So therefore, because there's an emotional connection, we're going to be in a relationship together. For other people, it is literally just a night of fun. It's about living in the moment, but there's no emotional tie afterwards. Part of being secure is having direct and open conversations about sex. Now, I did this in a previous episode from a couple of weeks ago. So I would absolutely listen to that episode with this. I'm not going to go into deep dive into what to say. But what I will say, though, is this. If you know that you're sensitive and you attach strongly to people after you are physically intimate with them, and as a result, you have experienced a lot of anxiety and insecurity in dating and relationships, then you want to wait until you know that you are both on the same page. And the way that you communicate that is that you don't have to go into a whole thing of, oh yeah, I just attach really strongly. I have anxious attachment and, I just don't want to get hurt. No, remember the first principle, direct and honest and forward. You just simply say, I would prefer that we wait until we are physically intimate, when we are more committed, or when there is monogamy, or when we are exclusive, or I would prefer that we wait until we know each other better. Yes, I am very attracted to you, because it's always nice to kind of reassure the person that you're not giving them this, oh yeah, I'm not ready for sex, because you're not actually interested in them. You can say, yeah, I'm very attracted to you and I do want to, but at this time I'm not ready. I would prefer to wait until we know each other more. Period. End of story. You don't over explain it at all. You don't go into your attachment wounding. You don't do any of that. You just are forward about what it is that you need from them. And what you need from them in that moment is understanding where you're at and for them to completely be on board with it. And if they're not, that is totally fine, but then they are not for you. Okay, number 7, learn to utilize your intuition so that you can conquer your naivete when it comes to dating, so that you can detect early red flags and not be seduced by expert manipulators or people with low character or selfish people or narcissistic people or just people who are just not right for you. That's basically it. There's a naivete that comes with believing everything that a person tells you or that who you don't know. There's a naivete that comes with thinking that you can change a person. There's a naivete that comes with not picking up on someone who oversells and underdelivers. But the way that you overcome the naivete so that you are not seduced by poor character out there is to really listen to your body and your intuition. It's to listen to that voice that says, did their actions match their words? And to really listen to that. Because the whole idea of overselling and underdelivering is a huge discrepancy between a person's actions and their words. And integrity is when actions and words match. Now, of course, sometimes we say something and we do something else. There's always exceptions to every rule. But generally speaking, We are looking for integrity in another person, and we are hopefully trying to cultivate more integrity within ourselves so that it's not just about the other person. So you have to be able to listen to that. Something doesn't feel right. Maybe this person is everything that you ever wanted on paper, but you're starting to maybe question certain things about them. You're starting to question their character. You're starting to feel a little uncomfortable around them. Maybe you don't feel entirely like you can be yourself. Maybe you don't feel comfortable to really voice an opinion. You can no longer be naive about that, and you have to really pay attention to that. Because you have it in you. Everyone does. And it's like a muscle, like anything else. And the way that we build a muscle is through repetition. So you have to practice it. And that's very important, because that's another way that you go from insecure to self-love, is not to be an easy target for the crappy people out there. Number 8. I read somewhere, and I do not know the author of these words. It was like somewhere on social media, but it said unknown, but it was so brilliant. And it said, "Having a crush cured my depression. Now it's time for my anxiety to shine." To me, it was so brilliant because I think it was so relatable. I did an episode on lust and love and limerence, and I really recommend that you listen to that because it's very much tied into what I'm about to share right now. Having a crush is really exciting. It breaks us free of the monotony of our lives. Sometimes when we're experiencing a low-grade depression, what we're experiencing is a boredom. A crush, because it's exciting, because it's novel, because it's new, and because we go into fantasy land, all our energy starts to go up. Some people even experience slightly like a mania. So it quote unquote cures the depression, but now you like the person and now it's all about anxiety. So you're kind of vacillating between these two emotional states, depression, anxiety, which is a very common thing, very common two states for people to vacillate between. And the root cause of it, or the way in which you change this pattern, is finding things in life that fulfill you, finding meaning in life. That does not mean that you're going to be always happy. I know a lot of people who will go through periods of sadness and depression, but what gets them through is the meaning in life, that they see that there's like something greater than just themselves, right? And their situation. When we over-rely on the feeling of love, romantic love, when we over-rely on another person, like a romantic interest, to cure us of our depression, we give them the key to our happiness, and it's the same key to our anxiety, because then everything they do, we're watching every move they make to make sure that they like us back. We go right into choose me mentality, love me mentality, pick me mentality. And the deeper issue behind all this, or underneath all this, is really finding meaning in life. Whether that's through community, it could be anything that preoccupies your mind and your time. It doesn't mean that it's like rainbows and lollipops all the time, but it means that there are things that are important to your life that you invest in emotionally. And that actually is what protects us in many ways from certain depressions and from anxiety, and certainly from being like a ping pong going back and forth, where we feel depressed because we don't have any love interest, and then we get the love interest, and then we go right into anxiety. Every person who I've ever worked with who've had this pattern, and there's been many, because by the way, it's extremely, extremely common. Again, spectrum. For some people, it's very severe. For some people, it's a little bit milder, but it is so common. Every single person who I've worked with who have struggled with this in some way, the way to change the pattern, the way to break free of this habit, the way to break free from this prison really is to find more meaning in life, to teach the person how to meet more of their needs, the needs that really matter to them. It always boils down to your relationship with yourself. So the last point that I will make is no one is perfect. We are all autonomous human beings, that we have different childhoods. So we have different belief systems. We have different conditioning. We have every person has their own unique lens through which they see the world. So when you are in a relationship with someone, no matter how aligned you feel with them, you have to remember they see the world differently. And they might see the world, you might share some things in common where you see the world very similarly, but you're two different people. And this is why communication is so key. This is why learning how to be direct and learning how to validate your needs and learning how to teach someone very clearly and directly what it is you need from them. This is what bridges the gap between people. So keep practicing being direct and forward and noticing when you're trying to be invulnerable or cool, or you're trying to ward off being needy. Notice when you are feeling uncomfortable feelings and the habits that you get into. All of this are profound practices of mindfulness, self-awareness, and then projecting your communication. Anyway, I hope this helps. This was a quite robust episode, and I will continue to expand on this theme of going from insecure to more secure in various ways. But I am sure that there is one or two things that you can really take away from this, if nothing else. And I want to hear from you. So please, please, please reach out to hello@JillianOnLove.com. Me and my team, we read all your messages, we take your questions, we take your requests. And more than anything else, if you could share this with someone, because you never know whose life you could be changing for the better. You never know whose life you could be transforming by just clicking share. And please do not forget to click below and subscribe and have a follow. And until next time.